Welcome to the Future Is podcast, where we meet the people shaping what's next in business and life. I'm your host, Laura Kelleher, Honeywell's Chief Marketing Officer, and today I'm joined by Honeywell's Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Greg Lewis, and we're talking about transformation and the company's evolution to digital operations. Welcome, Greg. Thanks for joining us today.
Laura, thanks for having me. As you know, this is a topic I'm really passionate about.
Great. Well, good. Well, why don't we get started talking about a little bit your outlook and perspective on the macroeconomic environment right now?
Yeah, sure. The macro continues to be very challenging at times. We've gone through 4 years of an awful lot of disruption, and in many ways, the world is sort of picking up the pieces from the pandemic. And as you think about it, we're also going to a year with something like 50% of the world's democratic populations are going to the polls. So I'm sure we have, some excitement coming. But broadly speaking, the economy is healing. And I'm optimistic for things continuing to improve overall.
Yeah, it has been an interesting time over the last few years. With that, what keeps you up at night right now, and what are you most excited about?
Yeah. So the things that keep me up at night are probably not too surprising. There are things like cyber and cybersecurity, which the goalposts keep moving, and as much as we get advantages from technology, it also comes with risks that we have to manage. And then the other thing, of course, is geopolitics. As I mentioned earlier, we've gone through a lot, whether it's changes in tone in leaders, as well as potential for more conflicts, either actual conflicts like we've seen, unfortunately, in the Middle East and in Europe, and also just trade-related things with geopolitics between the U.S. and China in particular. So those are some of the things that keep me up at night. What I'm excited about is really the future for us. And, this is, again, the Future Is podcast, but the future is really bright. I mean, we're, as Honeywell, solving some very big problems. We just did the realignment of the company into the three main themes of the future of automation, the future of air travel, and also the future of the energy transition. And I think that Honeywell is going to bring to bear, along with our capabilities there, our capabilities around digitalization, to have a huge impact on solving some of the world's biggest problems. So I'm super excited about that.
So we're here to talk about transformation, and Honeywell has made tremendous progress in our digital transformation over the last decade. Can you walk us through that journey and what it's been like as CFO leading through all of it?
Sure. So as we've talked about in the past, we've really gone through a few stages of transformation here. And then as Darius came on, he really supported and advocated for the digital journey that we've been on for the last 7 or 8 years now. And then, of course, Vimal in the innovate and grow stage is going to have to take advantage of those things. And I talk about it really as we're at the end of the beginning of the digital transformation. We've done a lot to build the digital backbone over this time horizon. And a lot of that was a bit tops down in order to get that in place. And now we're at the place where we need to extract the value from it and moving towards, as you mentioned, things like digital operations. And we're only going to do that by engaging the workforce in a different way and creating the value from all of that investment that we've made. We've invested over $1.2 billion in our IT infrastructure over the last 7 years in particular.
So, Greg, how has your role as CFO evolved over that time period to help really lead this type of initiative?
It's actually been a really interesting journey because if you just rewind the clock a little bit, in the 2014 to 16 timeframe, I was the CFO for our automation and control solutions business, which was about half the company. And we had started our own digital transformation at that time because we thought it was relevant and important. And then when Darius decided to break ACS up and reorganize and realign the company, he asked me to take that to the enterprise level, and we started what was called Enterprise Information Management. So that was the beginning of what became Honeywell Digital and our journey towards trying to become a data-oriented organization. That was very helpful for me as I then stepped into the CFO role because I didn't need to be convinced that that was a good thing to do. I had authored the first strategic plan around that effort, and understanding in depth of what that was required to make it successful from the CFO chair was super helpful. We have purview over everything that goes on in Honeywell. It all winds up in the financial statements in one way or another. So I'm very much a proponent of CFOs as transformation leaders. And so I think having that experience and the enrollment of that agenda in the CFO organization has been of great value for the company to make this successful.
Yeah, seeing it from the inside out probably gives you that perspective on the true value that's being delivered with all of this transformation.
100%. And I can imagine if somebody was to come to my chair and try to convince me of that without that context and background, it would have been a much, much harder putt than having been, there from the beginning as we were building the context and the value props for doing it.
So business leaders and enterprises, how do they need to think differently to support these the next generation of innovators?
Yeah. So if you think about our accelerator operating system, as we think about that, that's the way we run Honeywell. It's also a bit of a learning platform as well. And, we need to think about how we're going to both engage our organization more deeply and help them learn. Getting to understand how to use these technologies is going to be pretty critical. AI fundamentally is a learning accelerant. And if we can figure out how to leverage that, that is going to change the way in which our younger people learn. They're not going to have the same career paths you and I had. It's just going to be different. And so therefore, we're going to have to figure out as leaders, how do we engage them, better, provide them some of the technical, training and so forth, and encourage the usage of that.
Yeah, it's really a new frontier, both for business leaders, companies, and for the talent that we're developing. Tell me a little bit more about how you see digital transformation driving efficiencies and also growth.
Honeywell Finance, we own the business operating system, the integrated business plan. We can't do that alone. Ultimately what we're trying to do is see around corners. The biggest advantage or disadvantage we can have is time. If we see things too late, either opportunities or challenges, we can't address them. If we have enough lead time, we can go make the most out of opportunities and also, get out in front of challenges. And so more and more, you're going to see us building models and not using so much people's opinions, and we're using data and indications from the outside world to understand where we're going. I mean, if you think about what the connected enterprise teams are doing and what they're doing with the Forge IoT platform they built, enterprise performance management is one of the deliverables, that value proposition brings. That's what we're using inside too. So we're using Forge for ourselves. We're also using it for our customers. And frankly, that's the big advantage that we have as Honeywell, whether it's our Forge IoT platform or whether it's our own enterprise data warehouse. That's given us really the capability to use some of these technologies like AI, where in other places people can talk about it, but it won't really be realizable because they haven't created the digital backbone that we have. So I think we've got this tremendous, asset for us to be able to go ahead and leverage from this point forward.
Our podcast is always focused on the future, but we like to end the podcast with kind of a fun question. When you were starting your career, did you imagine it evolving the way it did?
I'm the youngest of 6 boys from Shelton, Connecticut, and I barely left the state when I was a young man. I never thought that I would have the opportunity to see the world in the way that I have. Being the CFO of a global company, being part of Honeywell, which does business in over 100 countries in the world. I've gotten to travel to every continent except for Antarctica at this point, seeing different people, cultures, some of the wonders of the world. So no, I did not have expectations that, this would be my path, but it's been a tremendous one. I've gotten to learn so much over the last 30 years. It's been a huge value for me.
A huge value for the company as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.